11 o'clock on your Monday morning. Welcome in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler Head, Wes Mitchell, Chris Clark on your Reaction Monday. And guys, unfortunately, tough pill to swallow on Saturday. South Carolina goes down 36-33 to LSU. Very competitive game. Good things, bad things, controversial things. Plenty to talk to over the next hour.
We don't have enough time to talk about everything that happened in this football game. I mean, you're talking about a game that literally had everything you could possibly imagine happen. And then after all those things happened, Chris, we were still a matter of feet away on a field goal from having it all result in a tie score.
Yep.
Which would have been, I mean, it was insane enough already, but if all those things had happened and then we were just like, oh, actually, we're going to have to do some more of this, maybe would have been bordering on one of the best games I've ever been at, just in terms of high entertainment value. And if you were sitting at home watching this thing as just a neutral observer, I mean, you got 100% the price of admission.
Oh, it was a fantastic game from an entertainment standpoint. I said the cliche of you pay for the whole seat, but you only need the edge of it. Like, that's what it felt like on Saturday. And obviously came down to the wire. Unfortunately, not for the benefit of South Carolina. But if nothing else, it proved that this is a good South Carolina team that, outside of making self-inflicted wounds or self-inflicted mistakes and obviously injuries, this team can hang with a lot of teams that's on their schedule this year, including a very talented LSU team this past weekend.
As LSU was driving down, I just couldn't help but sit there and think we were about to witness either, another epic stop by the defense and arguably just one of the best wins when you kind of look at everything involved in it. One of the best wins in Williams-Brice Stadium history, or one of the most heartbreaking losses. And I couldn't help but sit there and think one of these two teams is just not going to be able to sleep tonight, because no matter who ended up winning or losing, you knew there was going to be a lot of just what ifs. Like, if we had just done this a little bit better, then the game would be different. And, South Carolina, you can't knock their effort or their heart like that. I mean, they played so hard. And they are talented. Like, I think we've seen that. At times, you almost wonder, did they play a little too hard? Like, did they almost care an inch too much and got themselves in a little bit of trouble in terms of not quite wrapping up a guy on a tackle, or getting a little bit too maybe out there on a couple of decisions and just trying to do a little too much, maybe is the best way to say it. But fantastic football game. Ultimately, were there a lot of controversial calls in this game? Of course. Did that steal the spotlight from a fantastic football game? Even people that had no reason at all to care who won were weighing in and saying this was bad. At the same time, if you're South Carolina, you're going to go back and look at it, and you're going to say, wow, if we just had not put ourselves in a couple of these bad spots, we would be talking about 3-0 and one of the best wins in that stadium's history.
Yeah, golly. I have a hard time figuring out which direction to even go with some initial thoughts, but I do think, and not that I care if people, at the end of the day, if people say, well, y'all are blaming it and saying it's just the officials, but just so it's clear, even taking all that out, to your point, Wes, this is a game where, and Shane Beamer's keeping the focus there too. Like, he's recognizing, as he said on the Sunday teleconference, the players are not blind. They see those issues. So, Nikki Minwari weighed in on Instagram about some of those issues. We all saw it. It had an effect on the game. You could be the most hardcore Gamecock hater in the world. It had an effect on the game. Now, could they still have won that game? Could/should. Yes. There were too many missed tackles. Shane Beamer acknowledged that as well.
17 things.
I think
total.
17. Yeah, that's what I got from PFF. Certainly, you're watching the game. If you say that number afterwards, you can think back and go, yeah, there were definitely some runs. I mean, Wes, I think you had a great prediction before the game that LSU's going to come out and try to establish the run some, right? And they had success in that. They had too much success. Garrett Nussmeier, give him credit. What a gutty, gritty performance.
That guy's a baller.
He made some big-time throws. Big-time throws. For South Carolina, you had some turnovers that were critical. You had some untimely sacks. You had some, a few busted plays on defense. You had penalties that were not bad calls, to be fair, that were self-inflicted. So there are a lot of things you could have done better to where you win this game. You had the kick at the end, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could you have done something to get 3 more yards? Could you have made the kick? Like, there's so many different things to where the officiating maybe could have just been a footnote in this game instead of what has been the leading story.
We'll start with the officiating because that is one of the bigger talking points come away from it. As you mentioned, it's not just locally. I mean, Herb Street talked about it after the game. A lot of national talking heads around college football bringing attention to it. And I'll reestablish what I said at 9 o'clock, and I've been pretty consistent with. I'm not one of these people that grabs the tinfoil hat and says, well, the league just doesn't like South Carolina. They went into the game with the objective of making sure South Carolina did not win. I think this was just a case of officiating crew that was very heavy-handed, making a lot of bad calls, as we saw not only in this game, but across the league and across all of college football over the weekend, and something that we see just about every single weekend. Unfortunately, more of the questionable calls hurt South Carolina. The 2 biggest calls in this game that people keep going back to are the ones against Kyle Kennard that negated the 2 pick sixes. I don't think anybody can argue the horse collar tackle was a horse collar tackle. I mean, by letter of the law, even with the adjusted rule this year of the quarterback being inside the tackle box, there's no denying he committed that penalty. The second one on the illegal blindside block that negated Imnori's pick 6 has started a little bit more conversation. Now, I've read this rule multiple times. By the way the rule is written,
Do you have that in front of you by any chance?
I will pull that back up because the way the rule is written, I don't think Kennard necessarily warranted a penalty. However, especially in today's game, when you are taking a shot at a quarterback, especially up high, you run a very high risk of being penalized. Now, again, it wasn't targeting, didn't lead with the helmet or anything like that. He did shove him, but when you watch it at full speed, especially against a crew that was already very heavy-handed, you're walking a very fine line making that type of play on a guy that was not going to affect Imanori running down the field.
Yeah, that's where I go back to you put yourself in the situation. And, I mean, you can debate all sides of it, but you put yourself in. And I also, guys, I wonder if he doesn't throw his hands up immediately. I mean, they always tell you. And also, I made this point on our podcast today. Does everybody realize how fast this happens? Like, we're talking split-second decisions. Like, do you know how easy it is to be like, oh, I wouldn't have done that?
Sure.
Well, you are in warrior mode. Like, this was an absolute battle from the very beginning. You're in warrior mode. Your thought process has been get to the quarterback for, at this point, nearly 60 minutes. And now, this was not a hit to the head. This was really not even a forceful hit. Give credit to Nussmeier for looking like he had gotten hit by Clowney in the Michigan hit.
If you're him, you're going to sell that.
It was an impressive flop.
Yeah, So you put yourself in that situation. Now, was it a forceful hit? In my opinion, no. He extended his arms. It was not blindside. Did you put yourself in the situation to let them make the play, let them make that call?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you did. But should the quarterback be able to? Because he did start. I think it's an important distinction. Maybe it's not in the rule. I don't know. He did start to pursue the play. Now, is he going to make the play? No. But you can watch. There's the angle. He's standing there at first. He realizes that Imamori is about to actually try to return it. He starts moving towards the play.
Yep.
And then there's even that one view where you see him get blocked, and then you just see the convoy of people go past him after he gets blocked. So the thing that sucks from a Carolina standpoint is, no, he's not going to make the play. But from a standpoint of did you have to hit him, is he pursuing the play? Yes, he is.
Here's the official wording on this rule. A blindside block is defined as an open field block against an opponent that is initiated from outside the opponent's field of vision or otherwise in such a manner the opponent cannot reasonably defend themselves against the block, exceptions the runner or receiver in the act of attempting to make a catch. It is a personal foul if the player delivers a blindside block by attacking an opponent with forcible contact. And again, that's where this gets debatable. What is forcible contact? And again, when you watch it in real time, in a way you can understand why the flag was thrown, especially with the crew that was already throwing a lot of flags that day. You put them in a position where they're going to have to make a judgment call, and they erred on the side of it's probably a penalty.
Was it called a blindside block?
Yes, it was an illegal blindside block. That was the official
Do we know that for
penalty.
a fact? Do we know that for a fact?
That is the way it was called on the field.
How do you know that?
Because I watched the game back, and that's what they called it, was an illegal personal foul, illegal
muted.
blindside block.
It was muted. You could not hear the ref. Like that was never like what was it? Was it a blindside block?
Check the tape.
Was that the actual call?
I will go back and make sure that it is actually written that way.
Chris,
Yeah.
on the official,
I've got my legal brief ready.
Okay,
Yeah.
good.
In that call, there is literally a provision on illegal blindside block that it is not a foul if it's a two-hand extension.
Right.
So if that's the call, then they got it wrong. Bottom line.
Right.
If they call it illegal blindside block.
Right. And
Because
that
it just says unnecessary roughness on the official.
That's more like a judgment
document.
call.
yeah.
So, and see, if you go back and listen to the broadcast, that's when his mic kept messing up. So you can't tell what he specifically calls on the play. Is it because it was blindside, or is it because he hit the quarterback and he's not in the play?
Right.
Basically.
Right.
Is the quarterback still defenseless? Now, you can argue whether he should be or not, but is the quarterback considered defenseless because he was the quarterback on the play?
Yeah.
By the way, do y'all know what I didn't know what this was until I just looked it up. Do y'all know what Hanlon's razor is?
I do not.
Don't attribute to malice what can be explained by incompetence. So I don't think there's a conspiracy theory. I think refs and umpires who do have a very difficult job to do.
Sure.
I just don't think they're very good a lot of times.
Oh, I don't either. And look, this is not their full-time job. They have other jobs. This is their gig on the weekend to make a couple $1,000s for calling a game. And yes, you can get, the league can put out statements, hey, they should have gotten this call right and that call right. There is not enough of a penalty process when it comes to officials making bad calls that do affect outcomes of games to de-incentivize them from happening going forward, I guess is the best way to phrase it.
As much money is floating around college football, can we not just make them full-time employees at this point?
The NFL hasn't even gotten to full-time employees for whatever reason.
Yeah. By the way, and I know we're about out of time on this segment. To me, these two calls, especially the one we're talking about right now, are debatable. There are two other ones that were also nearly as big that were not debatable at all, in my opinion.
With those coming up, we'll also get to some more of your phone calls as well. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Howard West Mitchell, Chris Clark along with you, recapping what happened Saturday between South Carolina and LSU. And unfortunately, a lot of the conversation does stem around officiating. And by the way, that is correct. Going back and looking, they did, and the microphone was having issues. They did call that unnecessary roughness, not illegal blindside block. That was my understanding by watching the play itself. That's what if it was going to be a penalty, should have been. But yes, it was technically called unnecessary roughness on Kennard, not an illegal blindside block.
Which illegal blindside block is a form of
it's a category of it, right?
So
it's very vague, of course.
Yes.
Everything has to be vague and difficult. What's a forcible block? What's you got LeBron style flopping going on. But anyway, so those two calls, I at least, and again, the first one, like I think, Chris, you said it earlier. When you see the horse collar live, you're like, that's not a horse collar. He didn't grab his horse collar. And then you look at the actual rule, and you're like, okay. In the moment, you're like, that's terrible. Once you look at it, you're like, hey, maybe the rule's not great, but you get it. It's probably the right call. And on that one, him grabbing him actually caused the pick six in the first place. You know, I even look at that differently than even Worry's taking that second one to the house regardless. But anyway, you can at least see maybe what the ref saw on those. I have yet to have anyone find an offensive pass interference on that play. And if somebody can tell me anything on that play that is offensive PI, I will shut up about it. But I just do not see it.
Are you talking about the one in the fourth quarter that negated the Campbell reception?
Yes.
Okay, and that was the one I believe they credited it, and they got numbers screwed up all day long. I think they credited it to Mazio.
But they threw the flag right at Mazio.
Yeah, and going back and looking, and I have about 5 calls in the game that I never saw clear evidence for after going back and watching it yesterday, and I just wrote PI on some wide receiver on Campbell catch because I didn't see anything egregious from Mazio or anybody else on the replay that would have necessitated that penalty.
Yeah, and you could tell on that one, like Kurt Reese, they're like scrambling to find anything. They're like, maybe it was on Harbor, but Harbor's on the complete other side of the field. That play was right in front of me. I saw if the ref called it on Harbor, which I don't know how you could have anyway. The ball wasn't even in the air yet. There was a little bit of contact between Harbor and the DB. The ball's not in the air yet. The ref who called it was on the Delvon Campbell, Mazio Bennett side of the field. I saw, like, he would have been calling it from 53.5 yards away if he was calling it on Harbor. He throws the flag at Mazio. And I saw the flag before I even saw the catch. Like, I'm going, what did they just call that? And then he catches it. So I'm sitting there like, what could this possibly be? And like I'm convinced he saw something. He thought he saw something that was not there, and then did not have the guts to just say, "There's no foul on the play."
But what did he see?
I don't know if he thought there was some type of rub about to happen on the play.
To happen.
Yeah.
So he anticipated a rub route that wasn't there?
Well, what else?
I'm not making
what
fun
else
of your...
could it be, Chris? There was nothing else to call. Literally, what else could it be?
I mean, there was a small collision.
But it's not even a collision. It's they touched.
They touched each other. Well,
that happens on every single play.
That's pass interference.
Happens on every play. Every single play.
No, I think you're right. Because, I came in, we talked about this morning. I was like, well, they must have called it on Harbor and got the number wrong. And then I didn't see where the flag landed. So I'm now in your camp. They did call it on Mazio, but nobody has a clue why.
And I have asked around, hey, was there any explanation? And, asked around people that know people in the building and stuff like that. Nobody has been able to give me an explanation on what the actual call. Like, hey, is there some obscure rule that we don't, nobody's been able to give it. That was a huge play in the game.
Yep.
As Chris pointed out earlier in the podcast, if we're going to call this thing ticky-tack, by the book on everything. Why are you letting Sellers get hit directly in the face on his interception?
Yeah.
Like not
line.
not even a. I mean,
Whoopsie.
yes, it's a literal, like, the exact interpretation of the rule. It's a blow to the head.
It's a swing. And some people, Clemson fans on Twitter, offensive line pushed him into it. No, watch the play. Go back and watch it. Take off whatever your team's glasses are. Watch the play. It's a wind up. It's a hit to the head. That would wipe an interception off. The pass interference call on offense that we were just talking about, Delvon Campbell's getting face guarded with a hand on his shoulder. Now, they're both hand fighting a little bit, but, like, that was more of a, if the flag hadn't come out so early, because I had people around me saying, they threw a flag while the ball, before the ball was in the air, I think. I mean, I would have been like, they must have called that on the defender. It was bad.
Tyler, do you have any answers on that one?
I don't. I went back and watched the entire game yesterday to specifically detail every single penalty, and I came up with about 4 or 5 ones that were questionable, mainly against South Carolina. There is certainly debate, and I know Brian Kelly also issued a complaint to the SEC about the punt block because technically you're not supposed to leave your feet, which is what Mo Brown did. So again, I think okay. Correction.
You can leave your feet if you're jumping straight up.
Okay.
You cannot jump. You cannot leave your feet in an effort to jump over a defender or to jump above the. Of course, they make this weird. The plane above a defender, meaning they don't want you going parallel to the ground.
Like basically using the defender to.
Yes. And so that was such a bang play.
Yeah, it happened fast.
Right. So Mo Brown, he jumps. He does leave his feet, but that's legal, which is probably why it wasn't immediately called. But he jumps so quick, and he is lifted.
Yeah.
The person on the shield lifts him.
Kind of flipped him over.
And flips him over. So it's like, well, was he leaning forward a little bit? Yeah. But how much? Like, is he kind of straight up? So that one was hard. I mean, I tend to think they got that one right. Is Brian Kelly right to maybe question it or get a clarification? Yeah, I actually think so. If I was Shane Beamer and that had happened to me, I'd probably send that one in just to get some thoughts on it.
Yeah, again, plenty to unpack from this. We'll get into some of the other things not related to penalties coming up next, as well as some of your phone calls. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on your Reaction Monday here on the game.
You want me? You want to do one? Okay.
All right, guys, we were out at our friends at Gold Line Framing last week. Once again, they took awesome care of us. Tyler got him a new hat, and those hats were so nice, man, that they actually sold out that day. From what I understand, they've already restocked. We can get you a Palmetto State hat or pretty much any other gift, home decor, art gallery, all right there in store. But most of all, if you've got something you want to have custom framed, Gold Line Framing is your place to go. 803-739-1337 or head on over there in person, 511 12th Street, West Columbia. You can get framed up original artwork, canvases, jerseys, flags. Maybe you've got a signed print from an athlete that you want to take to the next level for the Man Cave. Pretty much anything you can think of. They can frame it up for you over at Gold Line Framing. Give them a call today. That's, again, 803-739-1337 or head on over to 511 12th Street, West Columbia.
Welcome back in Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris along with you on your Reaction Monday. Here on the game, by the way, of course, tomorrow, hear from Shane Beamer once again as he gives final thoughts on what happened on Saturday, and we'll slowly start turning our attention to Akron coming up this weekend. By the way, we'll have some tickets to give away for you in that game coming up here in just a couple minutes. Real quick, want to head out to the Love Chevrolet phone lines. Danny's been hanging on for a while. Danny, appreciate your patience. What is on your mind this morning?
Hey. I wanted to talk about a decision that Coach Beamer made with about 4:30 left in the second quarter. LSU had a 3rd and 3 at our 19, and they didn't convert that, and they were called for a holding penalty. And it was at least 7 or 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage. And when you add the 10-yard penalty, beyond that, it would have been 3rd and 20. But Coach decided to decline the penalty, and it gave them a chip shot field goal from like their 19-yard line. And I was just really puzzled by that. I don't know if y'all have looked at the tape or even thought about that. It was right in front of me, and I was really puzzled by that. And that's something I'd like for y'all to ask when y'all see him again, and I'll hang up and listen.
I'm trying to, gosh.
I remember the play.
Yeah.
I wish Danny hadn't hung up. So the hole was 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage. That seems very deep, right?
Right.
I remember the play.
3rd and 3 at the SC 11, incomplete pass. I'm just looking at the game log here.
Yeah, it was an incomplete pass. Hole was called. They declined because obviously you're going to replay the down, and I would have to see the play again to.
I'll effort trying to look that up here as we.
But obviously it's kind of one of those things where you have a stop. You have a 3rd down stop, and you don't want to give them another shot at it when they do have a pretty potent offense, as we saw.
Sure.
And so you're kind of conceding, yeah, they can kick the field goal here. We'll just take our defensive stop and be okay with it. Now, those decisions are always, depending on how it plays out.
For sure.
You're always, and I think this game, you can, when it comes down to a couple plays, there's probably 10 different things you can question.
So we've spent most of the show obviously talking about the officiating because that's the main talking point coming away from this game, and certainly good reason for that. Nevertheless, there were things outside of that South Carolina could have done better to help them win this game. When you have a 17-point lead in the first half, that's a tough pill to swallow to be able to, at the end of the day, say you lost that game. Carolina's offense, still a work in progress, still making some mistakes, obviously. Defense was not perfect on the day by any means. And again, with how well this game started, you really hated to see South Carolina falter down the stretch in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, there are a lot of things where it's just this game is so complex when you're trying to analyze it because you do have the officiating angle that, yes, I'll leave that out for this part. You also have the angle of you lost your starting quarterback. He's a starting quarterback for a reason. I was sitting there many times during the game after the 17-0 lead evaporates, after you watch the officiating, after you watch the Sellers injury, TJ Sanders goes down. That was huge. That hadn't been talked about nearly enough. Jared Brown,
who's made some plays for you.
And some things doesn't go your way. You turn the ball over. I'm sitting there going, this is going to be, for anybody who's like a big win anyway person, this needs to be your favorite game of all time if South Carolina ends up winning this game. So some of those things are just LSU's a good team. They came back. They made some plays you give them credit for, right? I chalk some of it up to that, Now, are there a lot of plays we could go through and say, got to get rid of the ball faster there? Got to make a better decision there? Could you have made a better play call there? Could you have managed the clock better? Yeah, those situations also exist.
So Chris did pull up that play, Danny, he's right. That hold is pretty deep into the backfield.
There were 2 holds on that play. They called
it looks like. So, yeah, you're talking about a 3rd and long, but I still think they're thinking, hey, we forced the field goal. We're going to be happy with that. LSU probably comes back and tries to just get part of it back anyway.
Yeah.
But you look like an idiot if you back them up and they convert the 3rd down, I feel like.
There would have been, why didn't you just take the loss to down? You know, that type of thing. Like
Yeah.
that would have been there. And it would have been, I mean, even if they got some yards, I mean, you're still in a very, very makeable field goal range. So, I mean, I see the point, but it is a good point, like a good question to ask.
Yeah.
From Danny for sure.
Yeah.
Yep, definitely so. And again, we're not going to have time to get to everything from this game. We've got 3 hours tomorrow at Firehouse Subs out there in Lexington to continue to break this down. It can't deny the fact that Sellers getting injured in the 2nd quarter, tried to come back in the 3rd quarter, but was obviously not well enough to go, where he had to keep Robbie Ashford in for the stretch run there in the 2nd half, had a profound impact on this game because it made your offense one-dimensional. Robbie Ashford got a couple passes off there, but it's very clear there's a steep drop-off in the passing ability of Lenore Sellers and Robbie Ashford. And again, that had a huge effect, not only on the offense, but, and I looked this up, you know, in the 2nd half, you had 7 possessions on offense. 6 of them went for 4 drives or less. Yes, you had the 1 touchdown by Rocket Sanders, and you also had 1 field goal, but you were routinely putting your defense on the field time and time and time again. And that doesn't excuse the mistakes they were making necessarily, but at some point you're going to get gassed, and you saw that happen to them in those last couple of quarters.
Well, and the 1 field goal was off of the fumble from LSU, so that was actually, I believe, a 3-and-out as well. You were just already in field goal range, so. Yeah, it certainly affected the game, man. And you definitely would have been a little bit, maybe a lot more aggressive if you had your quarterback, I feel like. And so for Carolina, it was just there's a lot. You don't want to blame bad luck to the loss, but there was certainly some of that here. And, you know, I thought Sellers early on made some really good throws. He made some great reads on when to keep the ball, when to hand the ball off. You saw the pure speed on the touchdown run from Sellers as well. And it was just clear, though, when Ashford was in, LSU did not respect the ability to throw the football down the field. And when Sellers was in after he had gotten hurt, they did not respect his ability to run the ball. I went back and watched that play that Beamer referenced, how it was a give. It was a read, but he gave it, and Rocket got hit in the backfield. Healthy Lenore Sellers is keeping that ball every single time, and he may still be running. And so that just shows you, and LSU, to their credit, all their guys crashed down on Rocket because they're going, we don't think he can run anymore. Prove you can run.
Yeah.
So really, Chris and I had this discussion earlier. I have still seen a little bit of like, this offense, I don't know if this offense is very good. I've seen people posting on social media, Carolina's last in the SEC and this or that on offense. I don't think that's quite fair because you were already talking about an offense with a young quarterback and a lot of new pieces. And the Kentucky game, I thought the first half really kind of got thrown out of whack because Sellers had to come out for a couple drives. And obviously you went through pretty much the entire second half without Sellers in this one. And so it's a factor, and I say that with all the respect in the world for Ashford. Like, I thought he came in, he gave them a chance, played very hard, made some throws, made some plays, really gave Carolina a chance. That's why you recruited him, right? That's why you went in the portal. That's why you brought him in. All the credit in the world for that. But I like how Chris said it. Sellers won the job for a reason, and it's because he provides that dual threat aspect where he can run the ball, he can throw the ball. He put some passes in some tight windows on Saturday, and that just disappeared, obviously, when he was on the sideline.
Yeah. It did. And look, the other thing, I mean, a lot of the SEC statistics are still skewed. We have some teams in the league that haven't gotten into conference play yet. So here's another thing. If we want to do the statistical thing, just to have like both sides of it, I mean, South Carolina scored, you take out Eamon Warrior's pick six, they scored 24 points on the road against the Kentucky defense that Georgia eked out 13 points on. Georgia's good.
Right.
Lincoln Riley and Southern Cal scored 27 against LSU in Vegas. This Gamecocks team put up 33. There's a lot to improve on this offense, but let's not act like they've been bottom of the barrel so far.
For sure. Next game up is Akron. In fact, we actually have some tickets to give away. Hit it, Ed.
Run to your phone and start dialing 803-404-6100. It's time to give away some Gamecocks football tickets.
Touchdown, Carolina.
Sponsored by Carolina Honda Powerhouse, your local Honda motorcycle, ATV, and side-by-side superstore. Online at carolinahonda.com.
I have two pairs of tickets. Callers number 4 and 5 right now, 803-404-6100. Win yourself tickets to go see South Carolina take on Akron coming up on Saturday at Williams-Brice Stadium. We'll come back and wrap up today's edition of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs and your Reaction Monday here on the game. Welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West, Chris, along with you on your Reaction Monday. Reminder, tonight, Monday Night Football, Falcons and Eagles. Pregame coverage starting at 7:30, kick about 8:15, which I'm going to listen to right here on the game. I'm rocking my throwback
Tyler's
Ryan
ready.
jersey today. Ready for another loss. Hey, realistic expectations.
At least you're not the Panthers.
Hey, at least we ain't. At least I'm not.
At least you're not Florida State.
Or Florida. Things not going down the Sunshine State right now. Whew. Billy might be getting a $26 million payday here soon.
A lot of people in their basements in Central Florida talking about the Gators and the Knowles right now.
They might have a point, though.
Those underwater basements. By the way, our guy from Game Day with the worst kick I've ever seen is getting highlighted on SEC Network right now. How do you go backwards with a kick? I've never seen that before.
There's a photo out there of the exact moment that the thing goes wide left. The reactions are all-time classic. How many beverages did that young man have before the kick is what I want. The amount of false confidence that he had going on before, as he was talking himself into it, was
admirable.
It's at an impressive level. Put it like that.
And like in the past, McAfee will be gracious enough to sometimes award you a second kick, but he was like, well, that's the worst kick I've ever seen. And you embarrassed yourself in front of Darius Rucker, too. Ugh, all-time bad
when he was
look.
talking so much junk before, it's like, no.
Is that why we're allowed to give him like a very hard time because of the junk talking?
Oh, yeah.
Otherwise, we'd be like, that poor guy.
And like, it's one thing if like, all right, you kick it into the crowd to the left of the upright, but it went in the opposite direction.
And he lost his shoe.
And he lost his shoe. Like, just all around bad look.
Bad vibes.
That
Bad
being
times.
said, game day looked like it was a lot of fun. Great atmosphere, great crowd. Everybody was, camping out overnight and withstanding the rain and all that kind of stuff. And I thought all that was great. I think Dawn went 6-3 with her picks from before the game. So all that was good. And the crowd and the atmosphere was great for the entire game. It just didn't end up going the way we wanted it to.
Yeah, it could have been an all-time weekend, I think, because you had so many national people in town. And, I mean, McAfee has just become, one of, if not the biggest brand in sports right now. And he obviously loved it. And, he plays to the crowd. He knows how to he's a WWE guy, like you can tell. But, everything about the weekend was perfect. The rain had no real effect on the game or game day, even though it was raining some during game day. People still came out. Those drone shots of Gamecock Park with the thing just packed were phenomenal. It was a 3-hour infomercial for what South Carolina has going on. And I do think, on one hand, you're like, okay, what a missed opportunity for South Carolina because the game was there for the taking. The other hand, people asked, like, hey, is this going to be a hangover effect, or are the players going to kind of, you don't want to get beat twice by one game? If anything, I think you sort of double down on the fact that this team can compete.
Sure.
I don't think there are many teams on the schedule that you look at and just say, oh, they can't compete against that team. Like, are they still going to be, of course, underdogs in a lot of these games? Yes, but I think even Vegas, I think the lines on some of these games probably contract a little bit from what they probably would have been if you were squaring it up a couple weeks ago. Like, this looks like a true SEC football team. The big caveat being they got to get Sellers back healthy.
And that is a tough thing to kind of sit and realize today, only 48 hours removed from the loss. But we talked about this the entire offseason. If you got out of the month of September at 3-1, assuming they can beat Akron this weekend, you would have taken that. Most people in this fan base would have taken that. It obviously sucks knowing you were that close to potentially being maybe 4-0 or 3-0 at this point in time. But again, this shows that they can play with just about anybody. Yes, beating Ole Miss and Alabama and stuff, that is not going to be easy, but I'm not expecting them to go out there and get beat 70-0 based on what we've seen so far. Like, this is a good team, and when they're not shooting themselves in the foot and making careless mistakes like turnovers and stuff like that, they can be up to the standard of playing those teams well.
Well, and you are still talking about a young quarterback, so can you eliminate some of the issues with turnovers as the year progresses, with your young quarterback kind of getting better every week, you would think and hope. I think that's going to be the case there. And, I look around. Hey, Vandy, who we thought, hey, Vandy might be great. They came back down to earth. Maybe not great.
Shout out to my other alma mater, Georgia State. Big win there.
Great win for them. So Vandy came back down to earth. And I'm telling y'all, the team that looks highly beatable to me is Oklahoma. South Carolina's defensive front is going to give Oklahoma fits. Now, you do, as we're looking here, you wish you could maybe get Mississippi State on the schedule.
Do a little trade there.
Yeah.
They're pretty bad.
They are. I thought they might be a little bit better than people thought, but
I gave them too much. They beat some team like 55-0 week 1, and I was like, well, maybe they'll be tough on offense. No, they stink. They're not good.
How about Georgia State, man?
Telling you.
Shout out Del McGee.
I didn't realize they did it with 15 seconds to go.
Yeah.
That's tough for Vandy.
Tough look.
Vandy will, Vandy has a good quarterback and a very veteran team, so they've overachieved a little bit. I agree with you on Oklahoma. They've looked shaky.
Looked a little better this past weekend. We'll see.
They're shaky still.
O-line issues, not a good combination for them when they face South Carolina.
Tomorrow, Firehouse Subs in Lexington, right there in the Flight Deck Shopping Center, going from 9 until noon. Come by and see us. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game.